Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kim Chelf, and I'm with Hamilton County Public Health, and I'm here today with Marian Dickinson, who is the local food advocate for Green Umbrella. And we're going to talk to you today about SNAP at farmers markets and kind of what's the big deal? What are the benefits? Why is this something we're even talking about? So hopefully you'll leave here with some good information that you can take back to the folks in your community, maybe to your local farmers market, or give you some ideas if you're thinking about potentially trying to start a market where you live. We are recording this, so you will be able to watch it later, and we can make the slides available after the fact if you're interested in that. You also have the ability to ask us questions by typing in the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll try to leave time at the end to answer those, or depending on what the question is, we might be able to answer it as we go throughout the presentation as well. Hopefully you can hear us okay. We're going to give just another minute or two because I think there's at least another person or two who is planning on joining us, so just in case they're having some trouble logging in, and give everybody just another minute, and then we'll get started. All right, so in the interest of time, we're going to get started. So like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about SNAP at farmers markets. And so this is just sort of a general outline of some of the things we're going to cover. We're going to start off just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page as we use terminology. We're going to talk a little bit about farmers markets in general and sort of what is a farmers market, what types of things are they going to have. Just to sort of set the stage. Then we're going to talk about what is SNAP. Some people may be familiar with that acronym. It's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, but what does that mean? What's involved? What kinds of things does it cover? And then we're going to spend a decent amount of time talking about why a market or a vendor might want to accept SNAP. Why is this something that we're concerned about? What are the benefits around that? And then we're going to just really briefly touch on, we're not going to go necessarily into the nitty-gritty, but we are going to give you some resources that can help if you have a market that does want to look into accepting SNAP at their market. We will definitely touch on some resources for that. So we have some links and things that you can use, as well as kind of just a big picture, brief overview of how that process might work. So as we get started, I'm actually going to turn things over to Marian. And let her tell you a little bit about what is a farmer's market.
Thank you, Kim. So it's very basic. We can start with the USDA definition for a farmer's market, which is two or more farmer producers that sell their own agricultural products directly to the general public at a fixed location, which could include fruits and vegetables, meat, fish, poultry, dairy products, and grain. So that's directly from USDA. In our region, these often look like a market that would operate 1 or maybe 2 days a week. And they typically have the same vendors from week to week with maybe some rotation. Often in this area, they're outdoors, at least in the summer, and may go indoors for the winter. This is not the same as a farm stand, and we do have a few in our county. A farm stand is when one farmer is selling at the same location every day or several days a week. And that does not fall under the definition of a farmer's market. However, farm stands can also accept SNAP, so they are still kind of a part of the conversation. Most vendors at farmers markets will sell some type of food product the market may also have crafters or other things to fill out their assortment. Some markets will also have a food truck, or they may have vendors that sell prepared foods, and that will factor into SNAP as we further our discussion. And if we look at, so a survey conducted looking at markets in our region for 2015 with data published this year. What do our farmers markets offer? So of the 48 markets that were looked at in the greater Cincinnati region, you can see that 47, almost all of them, offer vegetables. Honey and fruits were the next most common, and then plants, starts, and nursery items, which also factor into our SNAP conversation. Non-bread, baked goods, eggs, and bread, you can see they all drop off with less frequency. But you can see what is most common at farmers market, and you'll find that those are the things that are also most widely accepted for SNAP eligibility. According to that same survey, Hamilton County has 19 farmers markets and 4 farm stands, so we're pretty well equipped. So many of our farmers markets in this area operate from May to October, which is the peak growing season for our region, so that makes sense. In 2010, about 15% of all farmers markets were open in the winter months. And the average seasonal farmers market in the U.S. was open for about 4.5 months of the year. Ohio is lucky to be one of the states with the most farmers markets, so feel proud for that. Many markets will offer some organic produce, but you should ask vendors if you are concerned about their growing practices. Just asking the question, how do you grow your produce, or how do you manage your pests or weeds, is a great starter question to ask them about their practices. Different markets can have different rules about who could be a vendor. They may allow anyone to sell, or have rules requiring produce to be local or organic, or to prohibit reselling, or things like that. All right, so hopefully now that we're all kind of speaking the same languages we're talking about farmers markets, we're going to talk a little bit about what is SNAP. So before we can talk about SNAP at farmers markets, we need to talk about what SNAP is in general. So just to kind of give everybody a really brief overview of the SNAP program, SNAP does stand for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This is a program that is formerly known as food stamps. So a lot of times people still call it food stamps. The actual name now is SNAP, but food stamps became SNAP. So food stamps really no longer exist. Now we have SNAP. It is operated by the USDA. So the money for SNAP does come directly from the federal government and is distributed to the states that then distribute the benefits to the people who need it. Almost 40% of all recipients of SNAP live in a household with some income. So a lot of times people think of this as something that people get when they're not working, but the reality is that 40% of everybody on SNAP has some income coming in from outside the home. So they are generally working. They just often don't make enough to kind of cover food. The national levels for SNAP benefits are you have to make less than 130% of the federal poverty level, which in 2016, to give you sort of a point of reference, that's for a family of 4, 130% of the federal poverty level is approximately $32,000 a year. So if you think about trying to feed a family of 4 on $32,000 a year, that's not very much. But you also have to have less than $2,000 in assets. So this includes anything that you might own, like a home or a car, and any bank accounts that you might have. I do believe they exclude retirement accounts, so like a 401k or a pension, but any other kind of savings accounts or checking accounts, all of that together has to be less than $2,000. So we're talking about some people who are in some pretty good need. It's not, it's not somebody that's sort of taking advantage of the system. These are generally people who really need some help. And nearly half of all SNAP recipients are children. So, and children being anyone under the age of 18.
But there are definitely a lot of kids out there who are living in households where they need some help providing food. It's one of the reasons SNAP is so important. In 2011, almost 45 million people were served by the SNAP program, and this is each month, which is about 21.1 million households that were served each month. And the average benefit was $134. So when I looked up the average benefit for 2015, which is the most recent year that there's data, the average monthly benefit had actually gone down a little bit to $126 per person. And there were about 46 million people that participated each month. So the number of people participating has gone up a little bit over the last 5 years, and the benefit per person per month has gone down. And that's not a hard benefit, that's an average, so it's not that every person gets that $134 per month, but when they averaged it all out, because your benefit is based on a variety of factors, including income and number of people in the household and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's just a rough average. And when we think about this, people don't generally stay on SNAP for a really long time. In fact, about half of all new participants received their benefits for less than 10 months. So most people stay on SNAP for less than a year. It's really a program that's meant to help kind of bridge that gap between trying to kind of get back up on your feet and you need a little bit of extra help, some money providing just a little bit of a boost to help you buy some food, and then hopefully you can get your footing and you don't need those benefits anymore and you can come off of SNAP and sort of leave those benefits for other people. So it's really not something that people stay on for just years and years and years. And one of the nice things about SNAP is it's meant to kind of address this idea that we call food insecurity. And so these definitions that you see are from the USDA, and so they talk about low food security and very low food security. So when we think about people who are food secure, these are people who generally have enough to eat. They don't really worry about where their meals are coming from as much. So you can see on the chart when you look at the sort of things along the y-axis. So worried about where your food would run out. Food secure people generally don't worry about that. Very low percentage of people worry about their food running out if they're food secure, or their food that they bought not lasting, or not being able to afford a balanced meal. Those are all things that if you're food secure, you probably don't think about those things on a day-to-day basis. But if you're food insecure, so if you have low food security or very low food security, those things are definitely something that you're going to worry about a lot. And so you can see that, with food insecurity, they're worried their food's going to run out. They're worried it's not going to last. They might not be able to afford a balanced meal. They might eat smaller meals because they don't have enough money to buy enough food for bigger meals. A lot of times they may skip meals, so they're not eating. Maybe they only eat once a day or twice a day instead of 3 times a day. They might eat less than they feel they should, or they might be hungry but not eat at all. And then a lot of times, especially with very low food secure people, you'll see that they'll lose weight. They may go whole days without eating. In fact, they may go multiple days in a month without eating, or multiple days over 3 months without eating. Those are all hallmarks of that very low food security. One of the things that kind of distinguishes low food security and very low food security are some of those last ones on the list. So the hungry but not eating, losing weight, not eating for a whole day, really having a very disrupted eating patterns, and really a reduced food intake. So these are people that really, really just don't know where their next meal is coming from a lot of times. And so SNAP is a program that directly addresses this issue of food insecurity. And how does it do that? Well, SNAP provides money that can be used to purchase food items that can be used at home, as well as seeds and plants to produce food. So this goes back to some of the seed starts, nursery items that you can get at farmers markets, as well as whole food items, so fruits, vegetables, bread, milk, dairy, cheese, a lot of the things that you're going to think about when you go to the grocery store, right? Canned goods, packaged goods like potato chips or snack foods, frozen foods, anything like that. With SNAP, you cannot buy alcohol or tobacco products. Those are specifically excluded in all cases, and you cannot buy prepared hot foods. So these would be things like if Kroger sometimes will have like a soup bar and you can get hot soups at the soup bar. You can't use your SNAP benefits on those. Yeah, rotisserie chickens that are pre-cooked. So one of the ways that we like to have people think about this is you can't use your SNAP benefits to go to Domino's and buy a pizza, but you can use your SNAP benefits to go to the grocery store and buy a frozen pizza that you take home and bake, or to go to, sometimes you'll have the like take and bake pizzas that you can get from like a deli section of a grocery store where it's not frozen, it's fresh, but it's not baked. So you take it home, you put it in the oven, you bake it. That's okay, but the hot pizza that all you do is take it home and put it on the table, that's not okay. So that's kind of the distinction with that. One of the other things that you can't use them to purchase hot coffee, but you can use it to purchase bags of coffee beans or cans of, powdered coffee grounds that you can take home and make coffee. So that's one of the distinctions that SNAP makes. It's really for food that's meant to be used at home. It's also why you don't see places like McDonald's doesn't accept SNAP, places like that, because they only have food that is meant to be eaten. You don't take McDonald's home and bake it again. It's already cooked. So that, as we're kind of talking about SNAP, keep in mind those sorts of things that you can buy. It's also not good for non-food items, so you can't use it on flowers or crafty items or soap or anything, pet food, anything like that. It's only for human food, and specifically those food items for use at home or plants that can be used to grow food that you can then use at home. So why would a market want to accept SNAP? Farmers markets, a lot of times we think of them as more something you see in higher end neighborhoods or in more affluent areas. So why would it be beneficial for a market to accept SNAP? Well, there's several reasons for sure. One of them is that it can help increase your market sales. So it's going to increase the number of people who have the ability to shop at your market. And we're going to talk about all of these more in depth as we go through, but just want to give you sort of an overview really quick. It's also going to increase that access to fresh foods for people, especially lower income people who might be struggling with that food insecurity. And then it's going to increase access to local foods for people. And there's a lot of reasons that you want to try to eat more local foods, and we'll talk about that some more in a second too. So we talk about increasing market sales. Currently in Hamilton County, there are more than 50,000 households that receive SNAP benefits, and that was in 2014. So it's about 15% of all the households in Hamilton County receive some form of SNAP benefits. So that's a lot of people. I mean, when you think about that, that's a huge number of people who could now potentially shop at your farmer's market. And so, all markets are always trying to kind of get more folks there, increase foot traffic, increase sales. And so we know that the more people that you can bring in and the more open you can make your market to people, the better that market's going to do, the better the vendors are going to do, the happier the vendors are going to be. And so, this is a huge chunk of people that potentially aren't able to shop at a market that doesn't accept SNAP, and now they can. And so when we did some sort of quick rough math, we figured out that based on that number of households and the average benefits, it comes out to about $13.5 million per month that's coming into Hamilton County in the form of SNAP dollars. And so in a minute, we're going to talk about the 10% shift pledge or the 10% shift challenge and thinking about shifting 10% of your spending to local foods. And so if you shifted even 10% of that $13.5 million to farmers markets, that comes out to be $1.4 million per month that could be spent at a farmer's market. And so again, it's a lot of money that is coming in to the county, and this is federal money, so it's new money coming in. It's an influx of money coming in, and we want to try to keep that money circulating in the local economy, and farmers markets are a great way to do that. A study that was actually put out there by the USDA shows that for every $5 in new SNAP benefits, you're going to generate up to $9.20 in community spending, and that was actually in 2002, so you think it's probably gone up a little bit since then. But again, so that's for every $5 in that federal money you're bringing in, you're generating almost $10 in spending within your own community. So that's a great thing. We want our local economies to be strong. We want our local economies to do well, and this is just one more way that we can help. We also know that for every additional dollar of SNAP benefits that come in, you're going to generate 17 to 47 cents of new spending on food. So that's just food in general, but hopefully some of that spending could be at a farmer's market. And on average, $1 billion of retail food demand by SNAP recipients will generate 3,300 farm jobs. And so that's even thinking about just more traditional sort of food, like if you're shopping at a local supermarket, a Kroger. But we also know that the more that we spend on local foods through a farmer's market, you're generating not just farm jobs, but local farm jobs, which then put that money back into the local economy. And it's a nice cycle. So the more that we can keep these things kind of moving in our own communities, the less that money is sort of leaving and going, to California or Mexico or, Nebraska or Idaho, wherever the produce is coming from, the better off. We want to keep those dollars here in Ohio and Hamilton County as much as possible. So we also know that some of the other things that we sort of know as we look at offering SNAP at the markets, in the study that was done specifically in sort of regional markets, the greater Cincinnati area and Hamilton County, is that for every person who came to a market and spent EBT dollars, they spent an average of about $15.70 in those EBT bucks per visit. So that would be their $15.70 of their SNAP benefits every time they visited a farmer's market, which is pretty good. I mean, that's $15 that they chose to spend at a market. We also know that a lot of times what happens is when a market starts to accept EBT benefits via SNAP, so SNAP comes on a card that's an electronic benefits transfer card, or an EBT card. It's how they spend it. It looks like a credit card. They swipe it the same kind of way. So when markets start accepting SNAP, they get the machines that can read the EBT cards. A side perk of this is the market now also has a way to accept credit and debit cards that people can use as a market. So traditionally, farmers markets operate mostly on cash because the farmers, that's an easy way for the vendors. I buy a pound of tomatoes, they tell me it's $5, I hand them $5 in cash and everybody goes their way. But in today's society, a lot of times people don't use cash much in their day-to-day lives. A lot of times people will come to a market and run out of cash, have to try to find an ATM. So by offering the ability for customers to use credit and debit cards, you can, again, potentially increase your sales at the market. And so in 2006, in the study that was actually published in 2007, they found that in 2006, Iowa farmers saw a 13.3% increase in sales when they started using machines that accepted EBT cards, credit, and debit cards. So they actually saw people were purchasing more because they had access to their credit cards, their bank accounts. They didn't have to go find an ATM when they decided that pie over there looks really yummy, and oh gosh, I only have $10 left, and that pie is $15. They could swipe their credit card and go ahead and purchase it. So that's another kind of perk of being able to, or offering SNAP is now being able to use, for people to use credit and debit cards as well. So when we look at a map of Hamilton County, you can see this map, and so this map itself is from our Health Equity Report, which you can find on hcph.org. But it shows the number of SNAP retailers across the county. So you can see that the lighter the area, the fewer SNAP retailers that area has. So the lightest areas have no SNAP retailers, then there's 1 to 4, 5 to 9, and then the darkest areas have 17 to 27. The little sort of pins represent the locations of farmers markets in the county. So you can see that for some of these places, the markets are actually located in areas that don't otherwise have a SNAP retailer. So the blue pins represent markets that currently accept SNAP benefits, and the green pins represent markets that do not. So you can see for some of these places, the markets, so for example, this is, this pin here is the Let Us Eat Well market that's just north of Cheviot. They do accept SNAP, and they happen to be located in an area where there are no SNAP vendors otherwise. So that's kind of an important thing to think about, right? That in some places, these markets could be the only place for these folks to use their SNAP benefits close to where they live. And that's a very important thing. Obviously, a farmer's market isn't going to solve all the problems of not having other retailers where people can spend their SNAP dollars, but it is one way. And we do know that most of the stuff that is sold at a farmer's market is going to be much healthier than the stuff that is sold at some other SNAP retailers like corner stores or convenience stores, where you're going to get a lot of chips and Twinkies and Ho-Hos and sodas and stuff that's really tasty but maybe not so good for you. You go to a farmer's market, you're not going to find a lot of Twinkies. Now, you're going to find some stuff that's probably just as bad for you as a Twinkie, but it's going to taste a lot better. And there's going to be an abundance of fresh produce, which is what we really want people to be purchasing with their SNAP dollars. One of the other things, so that kind of goes into this increased access in fresh foods, is one of the other benefits of farmers markets. So a lot of times you'll hear people talk about food deserts. And so the technical definition of a food desert is a low-income area where a significant number of residents are more than 1 mile in urban areas or 10 miles in a rural area from the nearest supermarket. And this distinction is important to keep in mind, because I'm going to show you a map in just a second of food deserts in Hamilton County, and you're going to notice that the entire west side of the county is not a food desert. And that's because most of the west side is considered rural, so it's all within sort of 10 miles of a supermarket, even though there are definitely places on the west side of the county where you are going to be way more than a mile from a supermarket. So that's kind of an important distinction to make. But before we get to the map, I want to also point out that in 2010, 12% of Hamilton County residents lived in a food desert. So we've got a pretty good chunk of the county that's living in places where they don't have good access to healthy foods. So this is the map. So you can see that the darker shaded areas are considered food deserts. And so, you know, you can definitely see a lot of those are congregated in the more developed portions of the county, because they are considered, again, the urban areas as opposed to the rural areas, which is much of the western portion of the county. But I think it's also important to realize that Hamilton County is kind of unique in the fact that we go from rural to urban very quickly in Hamilton County. And so just because, you know, out in Crosby Township they're not technically a food desert doesn't mean that those people have easy access to food. They're just kind of being hampered by the definition. So a lot of times different groups will classify food deserts slightly differently based on their local geography, because that you can account for some of those things. But if you're looking at the technical definition. So one of the things that happens is in food deserts you have a decreased access to healthy foods, because a lot of times you're doing your grocery shopping at those corner stores, the convenience stores, things like that. So again, farmers markets can be a way to increase access to fresh produce for folks in food deserts. And a great program that we have here in Hamilton County that can really help with this is called Produce Perks. So Produce Perks it's administered by OSU Extension in partnership with the Cincinnati Health Department and the Cincinnati Health Department's Creating Healthy Communities Coalition. And it is a great program that is basically a double your bucks program when you're buying produce from specific farmers markets. So the way that it works is if you go to a participating market, Findlay Market's probably the most well-known one in the county that does Produce Perks, but there's lots of other ones. So you go there, if you purchase, swipe your EBT card, and for every $10, up to $10 that you purchase on your EBT card, you will get an extra $1 to buy produce specifically. So it doesn't matter what you spend the first your $10 of EBT SNAP benefits on. So I can take my SNAP benefits down to Findlay Market and buy $10 worth of bread from Blue Oven to take home and make sandwiches. But they will then give me $10 in Produce Perks dollars that are good for produce, so fruits and vegetables. So it's a really great way to encourage people to spend more and eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, especially in a population that we know struggles with that, because a lot of times produce can be a little bit more expensive than packaged goods. It doesn't last quite as long, so people are a little more hesitant to purchase it because, well, I can buy a can of beans and it'll sit on my pantry shelves for months and months and months, but that bag of apples is going to go bad after a week. And if it doesn't get eaten, then I'm throwing it away, and I'm already on a small food budget. So it's a way to really help them sort of stretch their dollars and increase that access to fresh food, specifically fresh produce. So there are currently 11 Hamilton County markets and farm stands that accept Produce Perks. They're sort of spread over the county in a variety of places, and they're still trying to expand to more, so I think it's something that you might see expand out even more in the coming years as they kind of expand out. But it's definitely something to look for. So I'm going to now let the local food advocate talk about why we should be eating local food.
Absolutely. So in our region, we roughly define local food as food that's produced within our local food shed along the Central Ohio River Valley watershed, which is roughly 100 miles, so within 100 miles of Cincinnati. Defining local food is always tricky, and it's one of my most frequent questions that I get, because every region has a slightly different definition. If you live in California, you may measure this differently because you have an abundance of local food and a year-round growing climate compared to other parts of the country. In some states, they just say whatever is grown within our state. Being in the tri-state area down here in Hamilton County, that's a little trickier for us, so we like to include Kentucky and Indiana in our definition, but we try to keep it within 100 miles. And you'll see in the next slide, I have a map here where I've drawn some concentric circles. So the first one represents a 50-mile radius from downtown Cincinnati, and the outer one represents that 100-mile radius. So you can see within 100 miles gets you pretty much all the way to Columbus, Indianapolis, Lexington, and Louisville. So it covers a lot of ground, and having tried to eat within that 100-mile circle exclusively for 10 days, I can tell you, you can find a lot of food within that 100-mile radius, but it does take a little work to get 100% of your diet within that circle. But doable if you want to attempt it.
You're probably not eating a lot of avocados and bananas.
No, there were no avocados. Well, I was allowed some exceptions, so I didn't make those. But yes, there's no coffee grown in our region, and that is a terrible problem for those of us addicted to coffee. There's lots of good reasons, however, to try to eat local food. So I've listed my top 5. I'm pretty certain I can prove that local food tastes better. There is actually a study out there that did document this, but anyone who's grown tomatoes in their backyard knows this without a study to prove it. Or if you've tasted a local strawberry from a farmer's market compared to what you can find in the grocery store at the same time, there's just a better taste. A lot of this has to do with it not having to be shipped quite as far. So if you're picking a green tomato in California to ship it out to Ohio, that's going to affect the way it tastes compared to something that you can eat when it was picked that morning if you pick it up at your farmer's market. So that makes a huge difference. Local food also promotes good health. So in addition to the flavor maybe maintaining itself when it's not shipped across country, we also know that the longer your produce has been picked, the less nutritional value it has. So the nutritional quality of produce declines starting at harvest. So the closer you can eat your food to harvest, the more nutrients you're going to get. So the most nutritious produce is going to be what you could grow in your backyard, but certainly something you could get from a local farmer's market would still be much better. We also know that 56% of those who are involved in community gardens meet their fruit and vegetable guideline intakes. And that's rare in this country. So we know that 25% of non-gardeners, so maybe our more average population, gets their daily guidelines of fruits and vegetables. So we have basically a doubled likelihood of getting your fresh produce dietary needs met if you're involved in gardening. We also know that there's a for every $100 increase in per capita direct farm sales. So for every person in our county, if on average we increase our direct farm sales, so buying directly from a farmer at a farmer's market or from their CSA or driving up to a farm stand and buying local produce, for every $100 increase in that per person average, we see a 0.9 to 1% decrease in county level obesity. And that may not seem like a whole lot, but anywhere where we can move obesity statistics on a large county level is a pretty important thing to consider.
And I can tell you, having worked in obesity prevention for a few years, a 1% decrease in obesity rate is huge. Like, that is really hard to do.
And you can do it just by eating delicious food. Another benefit of eating local is supporting local families. So most of our local farmers who are selling at your farmers markets, that's their family business. If you look at traditional retail, when I go to the grocery store, 15.8% of each dollar that I spend at the grocery store is retained in our community. Compare that to direct marketing retail when I shop at the farmer's market or buy from my local farmers through a CSA, 100% of every dollar spent is retained by that farm. So that's a big deal. That does mean the farmer has to spend some of that money on their own marketing, but they're able to control that and at least make a better wage by selling directly to their consumers instead of selling through larger aggregators. We also know that consumers are willing to pay a little more when they know that something was grown locally. So that's another benefit for a farmer, that their spinach is worth more when it's sold where it was grown compared to if they ship it out to somewhere else.
And I think you see this sometimes even at Kroger. A lot of times they'll put little signs up in their produce section that say, "I'm local." And you feel a little bit better about buying it, right? You feel like, oh, wow, I'm going to buy these green onions that were grown locally, whatever Kroger is defining as local.
Right.
But, it just makes you feel good when you buy local stuff.
Absolutely. I feel good. But I'm also the local food advocate, so I'm a little biased. Another benefit, the fourth one on here, is building our local economy. So that same $100 I take to the grocery store, 25 of that gets respent locally. So that could be an employee that got paid and then they take some of their earnings and spend it locally. Compare that to the same $100 at a farmer's market, $62 of that gets respent locally. So that's a great benefit for our local economy, that more money is circulating within our community instead of being spent outside of our community.
And I think that goes back to, with those SNAP benefits being dollars that are coming in from outside, right? Those are federal dollars coming down. Now we're adding extra money to the local economy, and we want more of that extra money to stay in the local economy. So it's, again, reiterating that not only is this good just in general, but with the SNAP benefits it's particularly good because that money is not coming from within our local economy to start with. So now we're injecting extra dollars into the local economy and helping hopefully boost it, prop it up a little bit.
Absolutely. And lastly on my list, I have preserving open space. And part of this is just common sense. If there's a farm in our community, that means there's open space most likely, and it's probably green for a good part of the year. It's probably pretty to look at. Also, we know that when farmers get to interact with their consumers, they're more willing to reduce their chemical inputs and be a bit more cautious with the types of pesticides or herbicides that they use, because they see the people that they're selling their produce to, and they want to do what their consumers want for a variety of reasons. So does it make them a bit more responsive to what we want? So based on all of this, and particularly the economic piece, Green Umbrella has launched a 10% shift pledge, where we ask people to shift 10% of their food budget to local food. And if just 10% of our regional population does this, so this is the greater Cincinnati region or 10-county area, if just 10% of people do this, they just shift just 10% of their budget, it would add $56 million a year to our local economy, and for all the reasons mentioned before, boosting our local economy, keeping money and then therefore more jobs in the region. And that 10% shift for the average family is $13. So we've already talked about the average SNAP customer in our regional markets spent $15.70. So making SNAP available at farmers markets can make this goal achievable for people of all income levels, which is really important. And I should mention that if you would like to take the pledge, visit www.greenumbrella.org/10shift. You can learn more about the pledge and how to take it. And one of the resources available there that you will find is this local Google map that has all of the farmers markets listed. So here's a version of it here that Kim mentioned before that she had merged with the county map. This is a regional map. You can also select to show restaurants and grocery stores and farms and breweries that are local that can help one try to eat more locally in the region. But here's where all of our farmers markets are. So even if you're on the border of the county, this will help you find markets within and just outside of Hamilton County. And again, it's color-coded. So the blue pins accept SNAP benefits and the green pins do not.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that's nice about our area is there are a lot of resources for local foods in and around Hamilton County. Mm-hmm. You can see, there's, I think we talked about, something like 21 markets in Hamilton County, but there's a lot more just outside the county, some right across the river in Kentucky, some on out in Indiana, a lot of them just on the peripheries of other counties, so Claremont County, Warren County, Butler County. So really anywhere you are in Hamilton County, you're not too far from a farmer's market. And a lot of these markets operate on different days of the week, different times. Some of them have winter markets, some of them are just in the summer, spring, summer, fall. There's a lot of options, and if you're interested in not just farmers markets, but other places where you can get local food, the map that you can find here at Green Umbrella's website is a great resource because there's a ton of stuff on there that I didn't even know in regards to restaurants that source local foods, and if you're interested in buying directly from a farm, if there's some farms that will sell to you directly, there's local breweries, local wineries, all kinds of great resources. So definitely check it out if you're interested in local food.
I think at this point we have over 300 points on this map of locations where you can find local food. So it's pretty comprehensive. We do our best and we update it as frequently as we can.
And when we talk about that 10% of your food budget, it's not just your grocery budget, it's your total food budget. So it could be eating out at a restaurant or, any kind of food purchase that you would be making and not just your grocery shopping kind of thing. So that's where the restaurants and things come in. Because sometimes it's easier to, think, I want to go out to dinner. Let's find a local restaurant. Mm-hmm. But in the context of this presentation with the SNAP benefits and the farmers markets, it's definitely good to see that there are quite a few markets that do accept SNAP. And plenty more that don't. So plenty more opportunities to increase that as well, but it's definitely interesting to look at where they are. So I promised you sort of a quick overview of how a market can accept SNAP. We're not, like I said, not going to go into the nitty-gritties of it because that's not really what this presentation is about, but I did want to kind of talk a little bit about it. So there's sort of two different ways that people can use their SNAP benefits at a farmer's market. So the first is individual vendors at a market can accept SNAP, and some in the county already do. There are some vendors who, for reasons that we've talked about, decided it's really important that they accept SNAP benefits, and they've gone ahead and they're an approved vendor and they have their own machines, and you can use your EBT benefits at their stalls at a market. But the other option is that market as a whole can accept SNAP. And so we know that there are 11 markets in Hamilton County that do accept SNAP, and several more that don't. And so we know that from that same survey that we've been talking about, there are 6 markets that have vendors who accept EBT, but the market does not accept the EBT or SNAP benefits. And we have 11 markets or farm stands that accept SNAP at the entire market. So there'd be 7 traditional farmers markets like we've been talking about, and then 4 farm stands where it's just a single vendor. So there is some variety in the way that it is done. If, as a market, you want to accept SNAP, there's a couple things that you need to do. The first one is you're going to need to go to the USDA website and apply to become an eligible SNAP vendor. So there is an application. You have to be able to prove that you sell approved items and kind of list out some of the things that are sold. They actually have a guide developed specifically for farmers markets on how to apply because they really want markets to become SNAP vendors.
And the application for farmers markets is actually separate. It is distinct from the same application that, you know, a Walmart or Kroger would have to fill out. They understand that farmers markets are not going to be open 5 days a week, are not going to be open 12 plus hours a day, so they have made basically a shortened, simplified version for farmers markets, customized to the questions that make sense for markets.
So it's really pretty straightforward. It sounds a lot scarier than it is, to be honest. They even have a guide that walks you through question by question the information that you're going to need so that you can gather all your information before you go to do the application online, because it is an online process. So if you visit this first website, it'll actually take you to the website where you can access the application. So that's something that, you know, it's all online. It's really simple. They have lots of good instructions and guides that are available to you. So once you become an eligible vendor for SNAP, the second thing that you're going to want to do is visit the Farmers Market Coalition website and apply to receive your free EBT machine. So they actually have grant dollars or money set aside that they will use to help you purchase the machine that you need to read EBT cards. And this is a big help. It's a part of one of the bigger expenses of a market accepting SNAP is this EBT machine. It looks pretty much like a credit card machine that you're going to see. In fact, it really is a credit card machine that you're going to see at grocery store, Walmart, Kroger, the gas station, pretty much anywhere that you swipe your card. And so they're not cheap, and they are available for free through the Farmers Market Coalition. Again, there's an application that you have to fill out. There's some eligibility requirements, but in general, as long as you're an eligible SNAP vendor and you don't already have a machine, it's pretty straightforward in terms of getting your EBT machine. And they'll even help cover some of the fees on that machine. So just like when you swipe your card, a lot of times if you purchase something online with your credit card, there'll be like a credit card fee attached to it. This is no different. So there are fees attached that when people swipe their cards at the EBT machine, and the Farmers Market Coalition actually, as part of their program, will help you cover those fees for the first couple of years so that you don't have to either pass those charges on to your customers or eat those costs yourself, depending. So it's a really nice program. So again, here's the link to their website. You can go there and get more information, see what their program is all about, and do the application as well.
The Farmers Market Coalition website also just has a ton of great resources in general. So if you are looking to accept SNAP, they have lots of guides that other markets have created based on their experiences. And they also just have a lot of great resources about farmers markets in general. So definitely a great place to check out if you're interested in farmers markets.
It really is. We got some information from their website for the presentation today, so it's a good place to go poke around. And then we talked about produce perks, and this is specifically for Hamilton County. And so if you're interested in produce perks, and if you have a market that accepts SNAP and is interested in also participating in produce perks, I encourage you to have the market manager or the person who kind of runs the market, the board, whatever, go to the Produce Perks website. There's much more information about their program, contact information, so you can contact them about becoming a participating market for Produce Perks. And like we talked about, it's a great way to kind of help people extend their benefits a little farther. And really, if you think about it, it basically makes their, for every dollar they spend, they get $2 worth of produce, more or less. So it's a great way to kind of, or you can put, all produce is 50% off if you prefer to think of it in terms of a sale. So it's a great resource that we're fortunate to have here in Hamilton County. And so when you think about SNAP at the entire market, there's really the most common way that it's done, and this is by no means the only way, but is using the token system or the script system. And so what generally happens is the market will set up a booth where there's one person with the EBT machine, and someone who's coming to the market and wants to use their SNAP benefits will go to the booth. They will use their EBT card to purchase tokens or some other kind of script for the market. So it's basically money that's only good at that specific market. And then they will take that script and those tokens or whatever it is and use them to purchase food, approved food items from the vendors at the market. So they can take their tokens and they can go purchase vegetables and fruits and bread and milk and cheese and eggs and all kinds of things like that from the vendors at the market. And so this is a way that you don't have to have every single vendor with an EBT machine, because that would get really cumbersome and it's really complicated and it just is kind of a pain. So this is kind of how markets deal with it. And then what happens is the vendors will collect those tokens or that script, and generally either at the end of each market day or at the end of each month, they'll turn those in to the market, and the market will basically pay them. So if they turn in $5 worth of tokens, the market will then pay them $5 in cash, and then the market gets reimbursed from the SNAP program for the money that was spent. So it's kind of an accounting thing. The money just kind of gets moved around in various ways. So everybody, no one is losing money on the transaction. It just adds a couple of steps. Instead of me handing $5 directly to the vendor and getting my produce, there's a couple of extra steps for everybody involved. But it's really worked well for a lot of markets. And if this seems kind of complicated and hard to understand, one of the ways that we always try to describe it is think of it in the same way that if you go to like a carnival and you buy ride tickets, so you go up to the booth, they take your credit card, you buy $10 worth of ride tickets, and then you take those ride tickets around to the various rides, and you use those tickets to purchase a ride on the Tilt-A-Whirl and the Ferris wheel and the Scrambler and whatever it is. So it's a similar kind of concept, right? But instead of purchasing ride tickets, you're purchasing tokens or, farmer's bucks or some other kind of script that is specific to that market. And then you use those tokens to purchase the food that you want to from the vendors. So at the end of the day, everybody is happy. You can use your SNAP benefits at the market, the farmers get the money for their products, and the market can help people bring in more people to the market who might not otherwise have been able to shop there. So hopefully we've given you some things to think about, and if you have any questions, please let us know. We would be more than happy to answer any questions that might come up. If you have things that come up later, so if you kind of take this back and you're thinking about it later and something pops into your head, because I know that sometimes it takes a little while to process things, you have our contact information here. Please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about any questions or concerns. With We Thrive, we always encourage access to farmers markets as a great way to increase that access to healthy foods. And with SNAP, it's just an extra way to increase that benefit for everybody in the community and not just limit it to those who kind of are traditional farmers market customers. And then certainly, while we advocate for increased access to healthy foods, I think increased access to local foods is always a positive as well, because one of the other things we look at is that increased economic development and increased community stability. So the more money we can keep locally, the better off everybody is. So I hope you guys learned something today. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you, Marian, for agreeing to come and talk about this with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all those who've listened through.
And we hope that you'll join us for some other webinars we have coming up. And yeah, let us know if there's any questions. It doesn't look like there's any currently, so we're going to go ahead and sign off. And everybody have a great day.